What happens when a working class sport gets a 16-ounce energy drink sponsorship? Now, how did a sport built by stoic, working class heroes turn into a global phenomenon that's now defined by the bro culture?
What's up, little bud? Got a staring problem, pal?
Like what, dude? He's just looking at you. He's a baby.
Look at his face. Dumb little face.
Stop.
Yo, Zen, get your boy, dog.
This is the story of how motocross traded in its quiet toughness for in-your-face attitude and became one of the most recognizable action sports on the planet. To understand how motocross got to where it is today, we have to go back to the beginning. The sport's origins are often traced back to the early 1900s in the UK, where they called it scrambles. These were not glamorous events. They were brutal off-road trials across the English countryside, ridden by gritty guys on barely modified street bikes. The first major scramble, held in 1924, saw riders dressed in a little more than wool pants and leather boots. Perfection was an afterthought. Style really did not exist. When the sport made its way to America in the 1960s and 70s, it brought that same blue-collar spirit with it. This kicked off what many fans now call the golden age of American motocross, a time when the culture was all about dirt, determination, and knowing your two-stroke engine inside and out. The riders were tough, independent, and undeniably cool, but they weren't the polished, media-trained athletes we see today. But then things started to change in the sport. Motocross began moving from wide-open fields into primetime stadiums. Birth of Supercross in the 1970s was the first huge step. It wasn't a replacement for outdoor motocross, but a new condensed format that packaged the sport's raw energy for mass consumption. It turned a race into a show. The focus was no longer just on who was the fastest, but on who could put on the best performance under the lights. This shift from a participant sport to a spectator spectacle cracked open the door for a new identity, one that was more theatrical, more aggressive, and made for TV. If Supercross cracked the door open, the 1990s blew the doors clean off. This was the decade motocross stopped being just a sport and became a pillar of the extreme sports movement, a rebellious new offshoot called Freestyle motocross. It grew out of the free riding scene with Southern California as its epicenter. Freestyle motocross wasn't about lap times or checkered flags. It was about showmanship, personality, and pushing the absolute limits of what you could do on a dirt bike. Huge air, insane tricks, and a high-risk, high-reward attitude were the name of the game. Then ESPN lit its fuse. When the X Games launched in 1995, it took niche subcultures like skateboarding and BMX and beamed them into millions of living rooms. The real explosion for moto happened in 1999 when Moto X Freestyle debuted and was an instant sensation. Suddenly, riders weren't athletes, they were rock stars. This era gave us the archetypes that would define bro culture for years. You had the godfather of freestyle motocross, Mike Metzger, a pioneer who brought an arsenal of unbelievable tricks, and I believe was credited with doing the first backflip, but correct me if I'm wrong. I remember playing him on video games and thinking he was so sick. Then you had the anti-hero, Brian Deegan, who famously ghost rode his bike across the finish line after winning the 125cc main event at the 1997 LA Supercross. And then probably one of my favorites, Travis Pastrana, a prodigy who won the very first Moto X Freestyle Gold at the 1999 X Games. Pastrana had a raw talent and a magnetic, anything-is-possible personality. He was the reason I started riding Suzukis very early on. His rivalry with the more aggressive Deegan created a perfect good guy versus bad boy story that was just pure entertainment. This new identity was soaked in the skate and punk rock culture of the time. The whole aesthetic changed right before our eyes. The simple gear of the 70s was replaced by loud, flashy designs from brands like Fox, No Fear, and Alpine Stars. Motocross gear wasn't just protection anymore, it was a statement. It was the uniform for a tribe that valued attitude just as much as ability. With the stage set and the stars in place, all that was needed was the fuel to launch its new culture into the stratosphere. And that fuel came in a 16-ounce can. While other sponsors were around, the rise of energy drinks perfectly captured and amplified the new motocross identity, with brands like Monster Energy leading the charge. In 2007, Monster Energy began a long-running title sponsorship of the AMA Supercross series, and is still the title sponsor to this day. This wasn't just about putting a logo on a jersey, it was a deep cultural integration. Energy drink companies weren't selling a beverage, they were selling a lifestyle, and that lifestyle was aggressive, loud, and unapologetically masculine. The iconic green claw became synonymous with everything the new motocross culture stood for. Big trucks, loud music, massive air, and a never-ending party. This lifestyle in a can strategy was brilliant. Branding made sure that whether you were watching a pro race in a stadium or a local event, the aesthetic was the same. The message was clear: if you're into high-octane, adrenaline-fueled action, motocross is your sport, and this is your drink. This cemented the link between motocross and a very specific bro identity. Culture bled into everything. I got hooked. It felt like a whole generation of kids were living out their freestyle motocross fantasies in video games like MX vs ATV. I would play that game non-stop. Hollywood got in on the action, portraying riders as daredevil heroes. All this media attention took the niche culture from the X Games and broadcast it globally, turning riders into influencers and their lifestyle into a brand that millions of young men wanted to be a part of. The bro culture had officially gone mainstream. So where does this leave us today? Well, at the highest professional level, you could argue that the culture has matured. Today's top riders are finely tuned athletes. The wild child image of the 90s and 2000s has been mostly replaced by strict training, focused diets, and an obsession with recovery. Sport is more physically demanding than ever, and the discipline it takes to win at the top doesn't leave much room for the old rock star lifestyle. However, the image of motocross is still deeply rooted in that bro identity. Just look at the fan culture when you go to any Supercross event. I'm not it. I love it. I married a woman who knew nothing about this industry, and that was the first thing she noticed. The pits are often a sea of lifted trucks, coolers, and fans wearing brightly colored, heavily branded gear. Tailgating and high-energy party-like vibes are as much part of the experience as the racing itself. The modern bro stereotype is unmistakable. Flat-brimmed hat, the graphic tee, the tattoos, and of course the energy drinks. That's my culture. That's what I grew up in, and that's all I wanted to be when I was older. The look that started as a rebellious counterculture is now a dominant and recognizable aesthetic for many. And when you're a kid, you're so formidable, you want all the stuff that the riders have on their bikes, all the stuff they're wearing. Me and my brothers, we were part of that culture for a long time. Now I know some of the old school fans want some of that simplicity back, and I think that is coming back, but it's really undeniable that this culture shift helped transform motocross from a niche into the mainstream sport it is today. Bro culture, for all its cliches, made the sport accessible, marketable, and incredibly exciting to a new generation like myself. And it is going back the other way with simplicity and tougher, and a lot of information is coming out on how tough the actual sport is and the clean aesthetics you see with the riders now. So it's a mix, it's a hybrid, but you can't forget your roots, where you come from, where the sport has been, and where it's going. This culture created stars, built brands, and made sure that for one night in a stadium, thousands of fans could feel like they were part of the most extreme show on earth. But I want to hear from you guys. What's your favorite era of motocross and why? Is it today's athletes, the 2000s, the 70s? That's what I love about this sport. There's such a big demographic split now, and it's bringing in new people, new demographics, while still paying homage to the old way of doing things. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, this ride through moto history, it would mean a lot if you would subscribe, like the video. Appreciate the support, guys. And until next time, guys, we will see you on the next one. See ya.